I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was 2 a.m., and I was studying for my chemistry exam in my room. The house was silent except for the occasional creak and groan of the wooden floors. My eyes were heavy, and I had a cold cup of coffee beside me, but I pushed on, trying to cram as much information as possible. That's when I heard it, a faint, muffled noise coming from the hallway. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just my tired mind playing tricks on me. But then the sound came again, louder this time. It sounded like footsteps. I glanced at my door, which was slightly ajar, and my heart started to race. My parents were out of town, and my younger sister was at a sleepover. I was supposed to be alone. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I winced at the noise, but I needed to check it out. Slowly, I opened the door wider and peered into the dark hallway. Nothing. The sound had stopped. I sighed, feeling a bit foolish, and turned to go back to my desk. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the basement door. It was open. Just a crack, but enough to make my skin crawl. I knew I had closed it earlier. Our cat, Shadow, was sitting in front of it, staring intently as if something was about to come out. The sight of him, his back arched and fur standing on end, sent a shiver down my spine. "Shadow, what's wrong?" I whispered, but the cat didn't move. He just kept staring at the door. I took a deep breath and walked towards the basement, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The closer I got, the more intense the acrid, burnt smell became. It was like a mix of chemicals and something else I couldn't identify. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, shining my light down into the basement. Shadows danced on the walls, making it look like they were alive. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I knew I had to go down there. Something was wrong, and I needed to find out what it was. Step by step, I descended into the basement. The air was colder down here, and the smell grew stronger. I swung the flashlight around, its beam illuminating old boxes, dusty furniture, and a broken chemistry set scattered across the floor. I hadn't seen that set before. As I moved closer, I noticed strange symbols scrawled on the walls, barely visible in the dim light. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound behind me. I spun around, my flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing. But then I felt it, a cold breath on the back of my neck. I whipped around again, but there was no one there. My heart pounded in my chest, and I started to back towards the stairs. Then, I saw it. A shadow darted across the wall, too fast for me to see clearly. My breath caught in my throat, and I stumbled back, almost dropping the flashlight. The whispering started then, low and unintelligible, like a dozen voices speaking at once. I felt a wave of nausea as the smell intensified. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door behind me. I locked it, my hands shaking, and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. I was too scared to go back to my room, so I decided to stay in the kitchen, where it was brighter. I grabbed a knife from the drawer, feeling a bit safer with it in my hand. But the fear didn't go away. The lights flickered, and my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, but the screen was glitching, showing distorted images of my notes. My name was whispered again, this time from the dark corners of the room. I spun around, knife in hand, but there was no one there. I couldn't stay here. I needed help. I dialed 911, my fingers trembling. The operator's calm voice was a relief, but I struggled to explain what was happening. "There's someone in my house," I managed to say. "Please, hurry." The police arrived in what felt like an eternity. I ran to the door and let them in, trying to explain everything. They searched the house, and when they reached the basement, they found him. A disheveled, barely coherent man, an escaped convict from the nearby prison. He had been hiding there, but he wasn't alone. He kept muttering about something else, something he was running from. The police took him away, but the memory of that night stayed with me. The house felt different, darker somehow. My parents came home, comforting me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, watching. I avoided the basement after that, the smell and the symbols etched in my mind. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I still hear the whispers, reminding me that some mysteries are better left unsolved. When I was 12, I experienced a night that has haunted me ever since. It was supposed to be just a fun sleepover with my friends, but it turned into the scariest night of my life. It all started when my friends Tom, Jack, Brian, and I decided to have an all-nighter at Tom's house. We were excited, armed with a stack of horror movies, video games, and an endless supply of snacks. Tom's house was in a quiet neighborhood, and his parents had gone out for the evening, leaving us alone. We thought it was perfect. By 2 a.m., the house was dark and silent except for our laughter and the glow of the TV. We were deep into a creepy movie when we first heard it, a faint tapping sound from outside. At first, we thought it was just the wind or a tree branch. We ignored it and continued watching, but the tapping became more persistent. Jack, being the bravest among us, decided to check it out. He peeked through the window but saw nothing. A few minutes later, the landline phone rang. We all jumped, not expecting a call at this hour. Tom answered it, but there was only heavy breathing on the other end before it abruptly ended. We laughed it off nervously, calling it a prank, but a chill ran down my spine. As we settled back into our movie, I noticed a shadow moving outside, near the bushes. I pointed it out, but by the time everyone looked, it was gone. We tried to shrug it off, but the tension was palpable. Then, the power went out. The TV flickered off, and we were plunged into darkness. We grabbed our flashlights, the small beams of light barely cutting through the pitch-black room. Tom went to check the fuse box, but everything seemed fine. The power outage was strange, but we thought it might just be a neighborhood issue. We gathered in the living room, trying to act brave. That's when we heard it, slow, deliberate footsteps on the gravel path outside the window. They stopped right outside. My heart pounded in my chest as we listened, frozen in fear. Whispers started, so faint we couldn't make out the words. It sounded like someone was right outside, talking softly. The whispers sent shivers down my spine, and I could see the fear in my friend's eyes. Then, the back door handle started rattling. Someone was trying to get in. We huddled together, too scared to move. The handle stopped rattling, but the silence that followed was even worse. We could hear our own heavy breathing and the pounding of our hearts. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the window. We all jumped and turned our flashlights towards it, but all we saw was the silhouette of a man standing there, face obscured by the darkness. Before we could react, Brian's cell phone buzzed. He checked it and turned pale. He showed us the text message he had just received, "Let me in." Panic set in. We scrambled to block the doors and windows, using furniture and anything we could find. The noises outside grew more erratic and aggressive, banging and scratching, like someone desperately trying to get inside. We decided to hide. I found a closet in the hallway and squeezed inside, heart pounding so loudly I was sure whoever was outside would hear it. From my hiding spot, I heard heavy breathing right outside the closet door. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't find me. The door creaked open slowly, and I saw a hand reach in, groping in the dark. I stifled a scream, pressing myself against the back wall. Miraculously, the hand retreated, and the door closed again. From another part of the house, I heard Brian scream, followed by a thud and then silence. My blood ran cold. The fear was overwhelming, but I couldn't move, paralyzed by the terror. Suddenly, everything went silent. The power came back on, and the house was eerily quiet. I stayed in the closet for what felt like hours before I finally dared to come out. My friends emerged from their hiding spots, shaken but unharmed. Tom's parents came home early, finding us huddled and scared. We told them everything, and they searched the outside but found no trace of anyone. There were strange marks around the windows and doors, as if someone had been trying to force their way in. We never spoke of that night again. Even now, as an adult, I can't shake the feeling of those whispers and the silhouette at the window. That night changed me, made me more cautious, more aware of the dangers that could be lurking in the shadows. And every time I hear a tap at the window or a strange noise in the dark, I remember the all-nighter that turned into a nightmare. I couldn't sleep that night, no matter how hard I tried. It was one of those nights where every little sound felt amplified, and my mind just wouldn't shut off. So, I decided to pull an all-nighter. It was around 2 a.m., and the only light in my room came from the glow of my computer screen. My parents were asleep, and the house was dead silent. I was playing a game, trying to distract myself from the creeping feeling of unease that had settled in. I heard a faint noise outside my room. It was probably just the house settling, I told myself. I went back to my game, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. After a while, I got hungry and decided to grab a snack from the kitchen. The hallway felt unusually cold, but I shrugged it off as just my imagination. As I walked to the kitchen, I felt like someone was watching me. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing there. My heart was pounding, but I tried to stay calm. I grabbed a bag of chips and headed back to my room. As I was about to close the door, I noticed it was already fully open. I knew I had left it slightly ajar. My heart skipped a beat, but I convinced myself it was just a draft and closed it firmly. I went back to my computer, but now I was on edge. Then, I saw it. A shadow moved across the hallway under the door. I froze, staring at the door, listening intently. The sound of footsteps, soft and almost inaudible, reached my ears. My heart was racing. I knew I had to check it out, even though every instinct screamed at me to stay put. I slowly opened the door and peeked out. The hallway was empty, but the bathroom door at the end was slightly ajar. I felt a chill run down my spine. I walked towards the bathroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. Just as I reached for the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. I jumped back, nearly dropping my snack. Panicked, I rushed back to my room and locked the door. The room felt unnaturally cold, and when I glanced at the window, it was wide open. I was sure I had closed it. I quickly shut it again, my hands shaking. Then I heard it, the soft click of the doorknob turning. Someone was trying to get in. I wedged a chair under the doorknob to prevent it from opening. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The doorknob stopped turning, and the room fell into an eerie silence. I sat in my chair, staring at the door, wide-eyed, clutching my phone. I considered calling my parents or the police, but I couldn't bring myself to make a sound. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. My computer screen was the only source of light, casting eerie shadows across the room. I heard scratching sounds coming from the walls, as if something was trying to get in. My phone rang, displaying an unknown number. When I answered, I heard my own voice whispering, "I'm coming for you." The scratching intensified, and I heard heavy breathing right outside my door. The door began to shake violently, as if something was trying to force its way in. I grabbed a baseball bat from under my bed, ready to defend myself. Just as the door seemed like it was about to break open, everything went silent again. I heard a faint, sinister laugh echoing through the room. I was terrified. I'd barricaded myself in the closet, trying to stay hidden. The footsteps slowly approached my hiding spot, stopping right outside the closet door. The door handle rattled, and I held my breath, praying it didn't open. After a tense moment, the footsteps retreated, and I heard the front door of the house creak open and slam shut. I stayed in the closet for what felt like hours. When I finally emerged, still gripping the bat, the room was in disarray, but the door was intact, and there was no sign of forced entry. The rest of the night passed in terrified vigilance. Every creak and rustle was magnified in the silence. By morning, I was exhausted but relieved to see the first light of dawn seeping through the window. I cautiously opened my door to find everything as it was, leaving me to wonder if it was all in my head or if something sinister had indeed paid me a visit. That was the last all-nighter I ever pulled. Even now, I still get chills thinking about that night, and I can't help but feel like something is always watching me, just waiting for the right moment to come back.